Hello, and welcome back to Restful Realities. Tonight, we're traveling to a land where lightning never sleeps, waterfalls plunge from Table Mountains lost in time, and a nation's story has been rewritten in the span of just days. Close your eyes if you'd like. Let your breathing settle. Because tonight, we're exploring Venezuela, a country that has just witnessed one of the most extraordinary military operations in modern history. A place where nature defies logic and culture, runs as deep as the ancient rivers that carve through its jungles. As you settle into this moment, know that the world has just watched something unprecedented unfold. On January 3rd, 2026, in the pre-dawn darkness over northern Venezuela, the skies filled with aircraft. More than 150 warplanes screamed through the tropical night, their engines drowning out the chorus of jungle insects and the distant rumble of the Caribbean Sea. This was Operation Absolute Resolve, and it would change the course of a nation in ways that historians are still trying to comprehend. The strikes began around 2 in the morning, local time. Fuerte Tuna, Venezuela's main military complex in Caracas, erupted in flames as precision munitions found their targets. The presidential palace at Miraflores, where Venezuelan presidents have governed since 1945, was hit. Multiple air bases across 4 states, Caracas, La Guaira, Aranda, and Aragua, all felt the weight of American firepower. The citizens of Caracas woke to explosions echoing off the coastal mountains, to power outages spreading through neighborhoods like 23 de Enero and Los Tex, to the surreal sight of their capital city under attack. But the strikes were merely the opening movement of something far more audacious. While Venezuelan air defenses scrambled to respond, special operations forces, reportedly including the elite Delta Force, descended on a specific target. At his residence, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores were extracted, captured in what military analysts are calling one of the most daring snatch-and-grab operations in modern warfare. The precision was surgical. The execution was flawless. Within hours, Maduro was aboard the USS Iwo Jima, then transported to Guantanamo Bay, and finally flown to New York City, where he now faces charges in the Southern District of New York for narcoterrorism and drug trafficking. The charges stem from accusations that Maduro partnered with Colombian rebel groups to flood the United States with cocaine, that he led what American prosecutors describe as a narco-terrorist conspiracy. The reward for information leading to his capture had been raised to $50 million just months earlier. According to U.S. officials, the operation's precision suggests it benefited from intelligence gathered over months of surveillance. A CIA team had been operating covertly in Venezuela since August, tracking Maduro's movements and establishing what military planners call a pattern of life. General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, described how intelligence teams sought to understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore. The detailed knowledge of his location and routines indicates extensive intelligence work that made the operation possible. The aftermath has been immediate and chaotic. Venezuela's Supreme Court, citing constitutional powers, decreed that Vice President Delcy Rodriguez would assume the presidency. But the situation remains fluid, precarious. Defense Minister Vladimir Pedrino Lopez quickly asserted control on the ground, declaring a state of external disturbance throughout Venezuelan territory. Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello released a video showing himself surrounded by armed police, condemning what he called American aggression. The machinery of the Chavista government, built carefully over more than 2 decades by Hugo Chavez and maintained by Maduro, now teeters without its central figure. President Donald Trump, in his announcement, was characteristically bold. He stated that the United States would run Venezuela until a safe, proper, and judicious transition could occur. though he provided no timeline, no specific details on how this governance would function. He drew comparisons to his first-term operation that killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani and to Operation Midnight Hammer against Iran's nuclear infrastructure in the summer of 2025. He spoke of cleaning up America's hemisphere, of creating a safer, more prosperous region, of finally addressing what he described as the source of the Tierra de Aragua gang that has terrorized communities across the United States, the Venezuelan opposition, led by Maria Corina Machado, a woman who won the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize for her resistance to authoritarianism, celebrated initially. Her supporters filled streets and exiled communities from Miami to Bogota, waving Venezuelan flags, crying tears of relief that Maduro's grip on power had finally been broken. Machado herself issued a statement saying what had to happen is happening, suggesting the opposition was ready to claim the mandate they believed they won in the widely disputed 2024 presidential election. But Trump, intriguingly, declined to endorse Machado directly, leaving Venezuela's political future shrouded in uncertainty. Regional reactions have been swift and divided. Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil, Venezuela's neighbors and traditionally its allies in leftist Latin American politics, condemned the military intervention. Colombian President Gustavo Petro tweeted a warning to alert the world that Venezuela has been attacked. Russia called it an act of armed aggression, demanding the United Nations prevent further escalation. China, which has lent Venezuela more than $60 billion in recent decades, and whose diplomats may not have evacuated before the strikes began, issued sharp criticism about violations of international law. But Argentina's libertarian president Javier Milei praised the operation, calling it a new day for Latin America. What makes this operation particularly significant from a geopolitical standpoint is its timing and its clarity of purpose. For months, the Trump administration had been building military pressure in the Caribbean. In August 2025, warships began deploying to the Southern Caribbean. In September, the United States Southern Command started conducting strikes on vessels, allegedly trafficking drugs on behalf of the Venezuelan government. In November, the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier strike group arrived in the region. By December, the Coast Guard's deployable specialized forces were boarding and seizing oil tankers carrying sanctioned Venezuelan crude, effectively imposing a naval blockade. The operation also reflects what analysts call the Trump corollary, a doctrine outlined in the 2025 National Security Strategy that envisions a more active, assertive United States role in the Western Hemisphere. Trump explicitly stated that America First foreign policy means building a safer hemisphere, that the United States has a right and a duty to address threats in its own neighborhood. He suggested that American companies would develop Venezuela's oil reserves, the largest proven reserves in the world, though how this would work legally or practically remains unclear. For Venezuelans, this moment is impossibly complex. The nation has endured years of economic collapse, hyperinflation that turned bolivars into worthless paper, shortages of basic goods like eggs and milk, a humanitarian crisis that has driven more than 7 million people to flee the country. Many Venezuelans despise Maduro, blaming him for their suffering, for the corruption and mismanagement that destroyed an oil-rich nation's prosperity. But others, even those who oppose Maduro, feel a visceral anger at foreign military intervention, at bombs falling on their capital, at the violation of sovereignty that such an operation represents. Venezuela's history is deeply marked by anti-imperialism, by the legacy of Simon Bolivar, who fought to liberate South America from European colonialism, by a national identity built on independence and self-determination. The humanitarian implications are enormous. Venezuela's neighbors, particularly Colombia, which already hosts more than 2 million Venezuelan refugees, now face the prospect of even greater migration if violence and instability escalate. The country's infrastructure, already crumbling after years of underinvestment and economic crisis, has been further damaged by the strikes. Large portions of Caracas remain without electricity. The psychological trauma of living through a military attack, of watching your city bombed, of not knowing what comes next, will ripple through Venezuelan society for generations. And what of the future? The Trump administration has promised another operation if necessary, a warning clearly aimed at other members of the Chavista leadership. Defense Minister Pedrino Lopez, Interior Minister Cabello, National Assembly President Jorge Rodriguez. These men now face a choice. Do they fight to preserve the system that gave them power? Do they negotiate their own exits on more favorable terms than Maduro received? Do they attempt to work with the United States, as Trump suggested Vice President Delcy Rodriguez would do, only for her to strike a more defiant tone in public statements? The fractures within the regime are becoming visible, and the coming days will reveal whether the Chavista project can survive without its figurehead, or whether it will collapse into internal conflict. As this unfolds, the rest of Latin America watches nervously. If the United States can extract a sitting president from Venezuela, can it do the same elsewhere? The message being sent is unmistakable. This is not the Cold War era of covert CIA operations and plausible deniability. This is overt military power deployed with overwhelming force and defended publicly as justified and necessary. It represents a fundamental shift in how the United States engages with its hemisphere, one that promises to reshape relationships, alliances, and the balance of power across the region for years to come. But Venezuela is so much more than this moment of crisis. It is a nation of staggering natural beauty, of cultural richness that stretches back thousands of years, of geological wonders that seem almost otherworldly, of people whose resilience and creativity have sustained them through impossible hardships. Tonight, we will explore 100 fascinating facts about this remarkable country. Facts that remind us that beneath the headlines and the political turmoil, Venezuela remains a place of profound depth, complexity, and wonder. Let us begin with a place that feels like it belongs to another world. A place where waterfalls plunge from the edge of prehistoric plateaus, where clouds cling to the sides of mountains that rise abruptly from the jungle floor like the towers of some ancient civilization. This is the Guiana Highlands, and it is home to one of Earth's most extraordinary sights, Angel Falls, known to the indigenous Pemon people as Carapacapai Meru, meaning waterfall of the deepest place, is the tallest uninterrupted waterfall on the planet. Stand at its base if you ever have the chance, and you will have to crane your neck back, further back still, to see where the water begins its journey. The falls drop 979 meters, 3,212 feet, from the summit of Tepuy. The main plunge alone is 807 meters, a distance so vast that much of the water never even reaches the ground as liquid. It atomizes into mist during the fall, creating a permanent cloud at the base of the cliff that shimmers in the equatorial sunlight. The waterfall was measured officially in 1949 by an expedition funded by National Geographic and led by Ruth Robertson. The team had to hack their way through dense jungle, navigate treacherous rivers, and scale the steep slopes surrounding the falls. When they finally arrived and took their measurements, they confirmed what local indigenous people had known forever, that this was a place of incomprehensible scale, a place where the earth seemed to reach up and touch the heavens. Angel Falls pours over the edge of a Tepuy, which translates to Devil's Mountain in the Pemon language. The Pemon people, who have lived in this region for thousands of years, traditionally avoided the Tepuy. These mountains were sacred, home to spirits and guardians, places where the gods dwelled and humans should not venture. Tepuy in particular was regarded with fear. The indigenous belief held that an evil spirit lived there, angrily thrusting the water over the cliff's edge. Even today, when Pemon guides lead tourists to the falls, there is a reverence in how they speak of the place, an acknowledgement that this is not merely a tourist attraction, but a site of profound spiritual significance. The waterfall got its English name from an American aviator named James Crawford Angel, Jimmy Angel. As he was known, was a bush pilot and adventurer who was searching for gold in the Venezuelan wilderness during the 1930s. Flying over the Guiana highlands in 1933, he spotted the massive waterfall cascading from Awayan Tepui. He returned in 1936 with plans to land atop the Tepui, convinced that there were valuable ore beds hidden on the plateau. On October 9, 1937, Angel attempted the landing in his Flamingo monoplane, El Rio Caroni. The landing was successful in the sense that the plane came down in one piece. But Awayan Tepui's summit is not solid rock. Much of it is marshy, waterlogged terrain, and when Angel's wheels touched down, they immediately sank into the mud. The plane was stuck. Angel and his 3 companions, including his wife Marie, realized they would have to descend the Tepui on foot. What followed was an 11-day trek across the mountain's gradual back slope, navigating difficult terrain with limited supplies, unsure if they would make it back to civilization. They did, barely, emerging exhausted but alive. News of their adventure spread quickly, and the waterfall was named Angel Falls in Jimmy Angel's honor. The name first appearing on a Venezuelan government map in December 1939. Angel's plane remained atop Awayan Tepui for 33 years, slowly rusting in the tropical climate, a silent monument to human ambition and hubris. In 1970, a helicopter finally lifted the plane off the mountain. It was restored and now sits on display at the airport in Ciudad Bolivar, a reminder of the expedition that brought international attention to Venezuela's greatest natural wonder. A replica plane sits atop the falls today, visible to tourists who fly over the site. But Angel Falls is just one element of a much larger story. The Guiana Highlands, which stretch across southeastern Venezuela and into parts of Guyana and Brazil, are among the oldest geological formations on Earth. The rock here dates back approximately 2 billion years to the Precambrian period. This land existed before the supercontinent Pangaea began to break apart, before the Atlantic Ocean formed, before most of the recognizable features of our modern world came into being. The Tepui themselves are the remnants of an ancient plateau that once covered this entire region. Over hundreds of millions of years, erosion carved away the softer rock, leaving these isolated tabletop mountains standing like islands in a sea of jungle. There are more than 100 Tepui in the region, each one a unique ecosystem. The vertical walls, often rising more than 1,000 meters straight up, create such profound isolation that species on the summits have evolved separately from those in the lowlands. Plants and animals found atop Tepui exist nowhere else on Earth. The summits are like lost worlds, which is precisely how Sir Arthur Conan Doyle depicted them in his novel The Lost World, published in 1912. Doyle never visited the Tepui himself, but he heard about them from British botanist Sir Everard Thurn, who lectured about his explorations in the Guiana Highlands. Doyle took the concept of these isolated plateaus and populated them with dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures, creating one of the first great works of science fiction about hidden lands where evolution took a different path, the reality of what lives atop Tepui. While not quite as dramatic as dinosaurs, is extraordinary in its own right. The summits host unique species of carnivorous plants, orchids found nowhere else, insects that have evolved in complete isolation for millions of years. The environment is harsh. Nutrients are scarce in the ancient weathered rock. Rainfall is abundant, but drains quickly through the porous sandstone. Plants have had to adapt in remarkable ways, developing strategies to capture and digest insects for the nitrogen they cannot extract from the poor soil. Mount Roraima, which sits on the border where Venezuela, Guyana, and Brazil meet, is the tallest tepuy in the region, reaching 2,810 meters at its highest point. It is also one of the most accessible, relatively speaking, for those willing to undertake a challenging multi-day trek. Hikers who reach the summit describe a landscape that feels alien, almost Martian. The rock formations have been sculpted by wind and rain into bizarre shapes, labyrinths of stone that seem designed by some mad artist. Fog rolls across the plateau constantly, giving the summit an eerie, dreamlike quality. Rivers and pools form in depressions in the rock, their water stained dark red by tannins from the sparse vegetation. Canaima National Park, where Angel Falls and many of the tepuy are located, covers 30,000 square kilometers, making it roughly the size of Belgium. It was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1994 in recognition of its outstanding natural value. The park encompasses not just the tepuy, but also vast stretches of savanna, dense rainforest, and numerous rivers and waterfalls. The biodiversity here is staggering. Jaguars prowl the forests. Giant anteaters root through termite mounds. Capuchin monkeys swing through the canopy. Poison dart frogs, brilliantly colored in warning hues, hop across the forest floor. Hundreds of species of orchids bloom in the understory. This is a place where the Amazon basin meets the Orinoco system, where ecosystems overlap and intermingle, creating pockets of incredible richness. Access to Angel Falls in the park is itself an adventure. There are no roads into Canaima. Visitors must fly into the park, typically from Caracas or Ciudad Bolivar, landing on a small airstrip in the village of Canaima. From there, the journey continues by motorized canoe, navigating rivers that flow brown and red with sediment, passing through landscapes that feel primordial. The boat journey to the base of Angel Falls can take several hours, depending on water levels and the season. During the dry season, from December to March, the rivers become shallow and difficult to navigate, and the volume of water cascading over the falls diminishes. During the wet season, from May to November, the falls are at their most spectacular. A thundering torrent that can be heard from miles away. The mist rising high enough to be visible from aircraft passing overhead to stand at the base of Angel Falls. To feel the mist on your face, to look up and see water falling from a height equivalent to more than twice the Empire State Building, is to be reminded of how small we are in the face of geological time. This waterfall has been here for millions of years. It will continue long after we are gone. The Pemen people knew this. They understood that some places are sacred not because humans made them so, but because they simply are. Because they exist on a scale that transcends human concerns and reminds us that we are part of something vastly larger than ourselves. Now, let us travel northwest to the shores of Lake Maracaibo, where another natural phenomenon unfolds nightly, where the sky itself seems to come alive with electricity, where lightning strikes with such frequency and intensity that it has earned a place in the record books and in the folklore of everyone who has ever witnessed it. This is Catatumbo lightning, and it is one of the strangest atmospheric phenomena on Earth. Picture this. Dusk falls over Lake Maracaibo, a massive inland sea connected to the Caribbean by a narrow strait. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Fishermen in small boats begin making their way toward shore because they know what is coming. As darkness settles, the first flickers appear in the distance, faint pulses of light over the mouth of the Catatumbo River, where it empties into the lake. Then, within minutes, the storm intensifies. Lightning begins to flash continuously, an unending barrage of electrical discharges that illuminate the entire region. At its peak, the lightning can strike 28 times per minute, over 1,600 times per hour, turning night into a strobing daylight that never quite settles into darkness. This is not a fleeting storm. Catatumbo lightning occurs on average 260 to 300 nights per year, for up to 10 hours each night. In a single year, the region experiences more than 1 million individual lightning strikes. The phenomenon is so consistent, so predictable, that for centuries it has served as a navigational beacon for ships entering Lake Maracaibo. Sailors would look for the glow on the horizon, using it to orient themselves in the darkness. The indigenous Bari people who have lived in this region for thousands of years call the phenomenon the House of Thunder, a name that captures both its constancy and its power. The lightning originates from massive storm clouds that form at an altitude of more than 1 kilometer above the lake. The clouds develop through a unique combination of topography, wind patterns, and humidity. Lake Maracaibo sits in a basin surrounded on 3 sides by mountain ranges. To the west are the Parisia Mountains, part of the Andes system. To the south rise more peaks. This topography creates a natural funnel. As the sun sets, cool winds descend from the mountains, while warm, moist air rises from the lake's surface. The collision of these air masses, combined with a nearly constant supply of humid air from the Caribbean Sea flowing into the lake, creates the perfect conditions for thunderstorm formation. The storms develop in the same location, night after night, with remarkable regularity. NASA's satellite data confirms that Lake Maracaibo has the highest lightning density in the world, approximately 250 flashes per square kilometer per year. The phenomenon is visible from up to 400 kilometers away. Its glow bright enough to be seen by pilots flying over the Caribbean. The lightning produces enormous quantities of ozone, enough that researchers have suggested it contributes measurably to the ozone layer's regeneration over this part of South America. When you factor in that Catatumbo lightning can generate enough electrical energy in just 10 minutes to theoretically power all of South America, the sheer scale of energy being released becomes almost incomprehensible. For the people who live around Lake Maracaibo, about a quarter of Venezuela's total population, Catatumbo lightning is simply part of life. They grow up watching the storms, learning to distinguish between different intensities, understanding the subtle changes in patterns that signal shifts in the weather. But the lightning is also dangerous. 3 to 4 people die each year from lightning strikes in the region, usually fishermen caught on the lake when storms intensify suddenly. The lightning often strikes the water itself, and being in a small boat when this happens is frequently fatal. Local residents have learned to read the sky, to know when it is safe to be on the lake and when they need to seek shelter. There have been times when Catatumbo lightning has stopped, and these pauses have caused genuine alarm. In early 2010, the lightning ceased completely for several months, from January to March. The silence was eerie. People who had lived their entire lives with the nightly light show suddenly found themselves in true darkness. Speculation swirled about what had caused the phenomenon to halt. Some blamed drought, others pointed to climate change or environmental degradation in the region. The fear was that Catatumbo lightning might have been extinguished permanently, that one of Venezuela's most distinctive natural features might be gone forever. But then in April, the storms returned. The lightning resumed its nightly vigil, much to the relief of locals who had come to see it as an essential part of their identity and their landscape. The exact cause of Catatumbo lightning has been the subject of scientific debate for years. Most atmospheric scientists now believe the phenomenon results from the unique combination of topography, wind patterns, and humidity rather than from underground gas or radiation. The formation of a nocturnal low-level jet, a band of fast-moving air that develops at night, appears to be a key factor. This jet carries moisture from the Caribbean and channels it directly into the mountains surrounding the lake, where it is forced upward, cooled, and condensed into towering thunderclouds. The process repeats itself with remarkable consistency, explaining why the lightning occurs in the same location, at the same times, year after year. One of the most intriguing aspects of Catatumbo lightning is its relative lack of accompanying thunder. People watching the storms from villages around the lake report seeing the continuous flashes but hearing little sound. This is not because the lightning is somehow silent. Thunder is produced by every lightning strike. But the storms occur 30 to 60 kilometers away from most observation points, and sound does not travel well over such distances, especially when it must cross open water. The visual spectacle remains, but the audio component fades into the background, creating an experience that feels oddly disconnected, as if watching a film with the volume turned off. The phenomenon has played fascinating roles in Venezuelan history. In 1595, the English explorer Sir Francis Drake attempted a nighttime raid on the Spanish garrison at Maracaibo. Drake hoped to use darkness as cover for his attack. But Catatumbo lightning betrayed his fleet, illuminating his ships against the night sky and alerting the Spanish defenders. The raid failed, and Drake was forced to withdraw. The lightning, in effect, defended Venezuela from foreign invasion hundreds of years before modern radar or surveillance systems existed. Today, Catatumbo lightning has become a source of regional pride. The Venezuelan government has sought to have it designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which would make it the first natural phenomenon, as opposed to a place or a specific ecosystem, to receive such recognition. The Guinness World Records Organization certified Catatumbo lightning as having the highest concentration of lightning on Earth. For tourists brave enough to venture into this region, witnessing the storms is a bucket list experience. Tours run from the city of Mérida, bringing visitors by boat through the wetlands and swamps at the mouth of the Catatumbo River to the villages of Aloga or Congo Mirador, where they can camp and watch the light show from safe distances. October, at the height of the wet season, is considered the best time to visit, when the storms are at their most intense and reliable. Let us shift now from the spectacular to the everyday, from nature's grand displays to something far more humble, yet equally significant in shaping Venezuelan identity. Let us talk about food, specifically about a simple flatbread made from cornmeal that has sustained people in this region for more than 2,000 years. Let us talk about arepas. If you were to ask a Venezuelan to name the one food that defines their cuisine, the one thing they cannot imagine life without, the overwhelming majority would answer arepas without hesitation. These round, flat cakes, made from ground maize dough, are more than just food in Venezuela. They are cultural touchstones, symbols of identity, connections to an ancient past that survived colonization and continues to nourish people today. Arepas are eaten for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They are sold on street corners, served in five-star restaurants, prepared lovingly in home kitchens across the country. They can be grilled, baked, fried, or boiled. They can be split open and stuffed with an almost infinite variety of fillings, from simple butter and cheese to elaborate combinations of shredded beef, black beans, plantains, and avocado. Every region in Venezuela has its own preferred style and toppings, creating a rich diversity within a seemingly simple food. The history of arepas stretches back approximately 2,800 years. Archaeological evidence shows that indigenous peoples in the region that is now Venezuela and Colombia were cultivating maize and making arepas long before European contact. The Timodo Cuica people in the Venezuelan Andes, the Comana Jodo along the coast, and other indigenous groups developed techniques for soaking corn kernels, removing the husks, drying them, and grinding them into fine flour. They would mix this flour with water to create balls of dough, flatten them into discs, and cook them on clay griddles called budares. These budares, flat cooking surfaces made from clay, have been found at archaeological sites throughout northern South America, evidence of just how widespread and ancient this cooking method is. The word arepa itself comes from the Commonago term arepa, which means corn or cornbread. Through phonetic evolution and the influence of Spanish, arepa became arepa, and the name has remained essentially unchanged for centuries. What is remarkable is how little the basic preparation has changed as well. While modern Venezuelans use pre-cooked cornmeal products like harina P. A.N., a brand introduced in the mid-20th century that revolutionized arepa preparation by making it possible to create them in minutes. Rather than the day-long process required to prepare corn from scratch, the fundamental technique remains the same. Mix cornmeal with water, form into patties, cook until the exterior develops a golden crust while the interior stays soft and moist. The simplicity of this process is part of why arepas have endured. They require minimal ingredients, basic cooking, equipment, and yet the result is deeply satisfying, versatile enough to accompany almost any meal or serve as a meal in themselves. During the Spanish colonization of Venezuela, which began in the early 1500s, arepas remained a staple food despite the introduction of European ingredients and cooking techniques. The Spanish brought wheat, but maize continued to dominate Venezuelan diets, particularly among indigenous and mixed-race populations. As African slaves were brought to work on plantations, they too adopted arepas as a dietary staple. Over time, the food became a unifying element across Venezuela's diverse population, something shared by wealthy landowners and enslaved workers, by indigenous communities and European settlers, by people in the mountains and those on the coast. Few foods in any culture can claim such universal acceptance. A Venezuelan expression captures the cultural centrality of arepas beautifully. Un bebé nace con una arepa debajo del brazo, which translates to a baby is born with an arepa under their arm. The saying suggests that arepas are so fundamental to Venezuelan life that they are almost innate, that learning to eat and make arepas is as natural as learning to walk or talk. According to a 2015 survey, nearly 70% of Venezuelans ate arepas regularly, and before recent economic challenges, the average Venezuelan consumed approximately 30 kilograms of corn flour per year, almost all of it destined for arepa production. The variety of arepa fillings and styles is staggering. In Caracas, you might encounter a reina pepiada, stuffed with chicken and avocado salad, one of the most beloved combinations in the country. The name means curvy queen and was inspired by a Venezuelan beauty queen. Another classic is the palua, combining shredded beef with melted yellow cheese. The domino pairs black beans with white cheese, creating a visual contrast that gives the dish its name, referencing the game piece. For breakfast, a simple arepa with butter and white cheese, called arepas con mantequilla y queso, is standard fare. In the Andean region, arepas are sometimes made with wheat flour instead of corn, reflecting the cooler climate where wheat grows more readily. Along the coast, you might find arepas stuffed with seafood, reflecting the abundance of fish and shellfish available. Restaurants called areperas specialize in these stuffed cornmeal cakes, offering menus with dozens of varieties. Each arepa has a name, often playful or referential. The cifrina, for example, is considered fancy or posh, loaded with premium ingredients like Gouda cheese. The tambaranco roughly translates to ranch destroyer and is so filling it is meant to sustain you through hours of hard work. The playful naming reflects the Venezuelan sense of humor and the affection people feel for this food. Arepas are comfort food in the truest sense, evoking memories of childhood, of family meals, of the simple pleasure of something warm and satisfying. For many Venezuelans who have left the country, one of the first things they do upon arriving in countries like Colombia, Peru, or the United States is find ingredients to make arepas. Venezuelan diaspora communities have opened arepas in cities around the world, from Madrid to Miami, from Buenos Aires to Toronto. These restaurants serve as gathering places, as little pieces of home recreated in foreign lands, where the simple act of eating an arepa becomes an act of remembering, of maintaining connection to a culture and a place that feels increasingly distant. But arepas represent something deeper than just food or cultural continuity. They are a testament to indigenous knowledge and agricultural practices that predate colonization. The cultivation of maize in the Americas was one of humanity's great agricultural achievements, a transformation of a wild grass into a staple crop that could feed millions. The techniques for processing corn represent sophisticated understanding of chemistry and nutrition developed over millennia of experimentation. When Venezuelans make arepas today, they are participating in a culinary tradition that connects them directly to the first people who lived in this land, to knowledge passed down through countless generations, surviving conquest, colonization, economic upheaval, and political chaos. No exploration of Venezuela would be complete without understanding the man who looms largest in its history, whose face appears on the currency, whose name graces countless streets and plazas, whose legacy has been invoked by virtually every Venezuelan leader for the past 2 centuries. We must speak of Simon Bolivar, El Libertador, the man who freed not just Venezuela, but much of South America from Spanish colonial rule, and whose vision of a united continent continues to shape political discourse to this day. Simon Jose Antonio de la Santísima Trinidad Bolivar, Palacios Ponte y Blanco, was born on July 24, 1783, in Caracas, into one of the wealthiest and most influential families in colonial Venezuela. The Bolivar family had been in Venezuela since the mid-1500s, accumulating vast estates, copper mines, and plantations worked by enslaved people. Simon's father, Juan Vicente Bolivar y Ponte, and his mother, Maria de la Concepcion Palacios y Blanco, were both from the Creole aristocracy, people of Spanish descent born in the Americas who occupied a privileged position in colonial society, but who were nevertheless treated as inferior to Spaniards born in Europe. Bolivar's childhood was marked by loss. His father died when Simon was 2.5 years old. His mother died when he was nearly 9. He was raised by his uncle and by tutors, including Simon Rodriguez, a radical thinker who introduced young Bolivar to Enlightenment philosophy, to the ideas of Rousseau and Voltaire, to concepts of liberty, equality, and popular sovereignty that would later shape his political vision. At age 14, Bolivar entered military service, joining the white colonial militia. At 16, he traveled to Spain, where he met and married Maria Teresa Rodriguez del Toro Wayaleza. The young couple returned to Venezuela, but Maria Teresa died less than a year later from yellow fever, a tragedy that devastated Bolivar. He would never remarry, though he would have numerous romantic relationships throughout his life. After his wife's death, Bolivar returned to Europe, traveling through Spain, France, and Italy. In Rome, standing atop Monte Sacro in 1805, Bolivar made a vow to his tutor Simon Rodriguez, swearing that he would not rest until Spanish America was free from colonial rule. This oath, witnessed only by his mentor, would become the defining commitment of Bolivar's life. He returned to Venezuela in 1807, just as revolutionary fervor was beginning to build across Spanish America. Inspired by the American and French revolutions and by Spain's weakness following Napoleon's invasion of the Iberian Peninsula, the Venezuelan War of Independence began in 1810 when Caracas declared autonomy from Spain, though it initially claimed to be acting in the name of the deposed Spanish King Ferdinand VII. Bolivar, still a young man of 27, joined the independence movement. The First Republic of Venezuela was proclaimed in 1811, but it collapsed the following year after a devastating earthquake struck Caracas on Holy Thursday, March 26, 1812. The earthquake killed more than 20,000 people, and Spanish loyalist clergy proclaimed it divine punishment for the rebellion against the king. The psychological impact was enormous, and many who had supported independence wavered. Spanish forces, led by General Domingo de Monteverde, reconquered much of Venezuela. Bolivar fled to New Granada, present-day Colombia, where he was given command of a military force. In 1813, he launched what became known as the Admirable Campaign, a lightning military offensive that covered nearly 2,000 kilometers in just 90 days. Bolivar's forces moved with stunning speed, defeating Spanish armies and recapturing much of western Venezuela. He entered Caracas in triumph in August 1813 and was proclaimed El Libertador, the Liberator, a title he would carry for the rest of his life. The Second Republic of Venezuela was established, but it too would be short-lived. What followed were years of brutal warfare, shifting alliances, stunning victories, and crushing defeats. The Venezuelan independence struggle became part of a larger conflict consuming all of Spanish South America, a war that would last more than a decade and claim hundreds of thousands of lives. Bolivar proved himself a brilliant military strategist and an inspiring leader, capable of rallying troops through seemingly impossible situations. But he also faced opposition from within the independence movement, dealing with rival commanders. Regional caudillas who prioritized local power over continental unity, and the complex racial and class tensions that divided colonial society. One of Bolivar's most audacious military campaigns came in 1819, when he led an army of more than 2,000 men across the Andes Mountains from Venezuela into New Granada. The crossing took place during the rainy season, through terrain considered nearly impassable. Soldiers waded through swamps, climbed icy mountain passes at altitudes exceeding 4,000 meters, and endured temperatures that killed hundreds from hypothermia. Horses and pack animals died by the hundreds. But the army emerged intact in New Granada, where it caught Spanish forces completely by surprise. At the Battle of Boyaca on August 7, 1819, Bolivar's forces decisively defeated the Spanish army, securing the independence of New Granada. This victory was the turning point of the independence wars, establishing Bolivar as the dominant figure in the struggle against Spain. In December 1819, the Congress of Angostura created the Republic of Gran Colombia, uniting Venezuela, New Granada, and Quito, present-day Ecuador, into a single nation. Bolivar was named president and military dictator of this vast new republic. Over the next few years, his armies continued their campaigns, liberating Ecuador in 1822 and moving south into Peru, where Spanish forces still controlled much of the territory. The Battle of Ayacucho on December 9, 1824, fought by Bolivar's lieutenant Antonio José de Sucre, effectively ended Spanish colonial rule in South America. Spain's 300-year empire on the continent had been shattered at the height of his power. Bolivar controlled territory stretching from southern Panama to northern Argentina, an area comparable in size to modern Europe. He dreamed of creating a unified South American confederation, a single political entity that could stand as equals with the United States and the European powers. He organized the Congress of Panama in 1826, inviting representatives from newly independent Spanish-American nations to discuss forming such a union. But the Congress failed to achieve Bolivar's vision. Regional differences, competing national interests, and the sheer difficulty of maintaining communication and control across such vast distances doomed the project. Gran Colombia itself began to fracture. Venezuela, under the leadership of José Antonio Páez, a Llanero cavalry commander who had been one of Bolivar's key generals during the independence wars, sought greater autonomy. Ecuador similarly pushed for separation. Political factions formed around competing visions of how the new nations should be governed. Bolivar, who had always been more comfortable on the battlefield than in the halls of political debate, struggled to hold the Union together. He served as dictator at various times, suspending constitutional rule in attempts to maintain order, decisions that alienated many of his former supporters and tarnished his reputation as a champion of liberty. By 1830, Bolivar's health was failing. He suffered from tuberculosis, and the decades of military campaigning, often conducted in harsh conditions with minimal rest, had taken a severe toll on his body. Venezuela formally seceded from Gran Colombia in March 1830. Bolivar resigned the presidency and prepared to go into exile in Europe. But his health deteriorated before he could leave South America. He died on December 17, 1830, in Santa Marta, Colombia, at the age of 47, penniless and largely abandoned by former allies. There is debate among historians about Bolivar's final words. According to those who were present at his deathbed, his last statement was reportedly, "The three greatest fools of history have been Jesus Christ, Don Quixote, and one." Some scholars question the authenticity of this quote, suggesting it may have been embellished or misremembered. What is well documented is his earlier statement, "All who served the revolution have plowed the sea," expressing his profound disillusionment with how his vision of continental unity had dissolved into regional conflicts. It was a bitter ending for a man who had sacrificed everything for an ideal that seemed to die with him. Yet Bolivar's legacy endured and grew after his death. He became the symbol of Latin American independence, the embodiment of resistance to colonialism and imperial domination. His image has been invoked by leaders across the political spectrum throughout Venezuelan history. The cult of Bolivar in Venezuela is pervasive. His birthday, July 24th, is a national holiday. Statues of El Libertador stand in virtually every Venezuelan town and city. The main square in Caracas is Plaza Bolivar, and Bolivar's remains rest in the National Pantheon in an elaborate marble tomb. What would Bolivar himself make of modern Venezuela? It is impossible to know, but we can read his own words. Toward the end of his life, disillusioned by the failure of Gran Colombia and the descent of newly independent nations into civil conflict and dictatorship, Bolivar wrote, "America is ungovernable. Those who have served the revolution have plowed the sea." He expressed deep pessimism about the prospects for stable, democratic government in the region. History proved him both right and wrong. The nations he liberated did face decades of instability, but they also survived, built institutions, developed democratic traditions, however imperfect, and created vibrant cultures that blend indigenous, European, and African influences into something entirely new. Let us shift now to something that might surprise you. When you think of baseball, you probably think of the United States, Japan perhaps, or the Caribbean. But Venezuela has one of the richest baseball traditions in the world, a love affair with the sport that began in the late 19th century and has produced some of the game's greatest players. Baseball in Venezuela is not just a sport. It is a national obsession, a source of pride, a path to upward mobility, and during difficult times, a brief escape from harsh realities. Baseball arrived in Venezuela in the 1870s, brought by Venezuelans who had studied in the United States and by American oil workers who came to work in the petroleum fields around Lake Maracaibo. The first recorded baseball game in Venezuela was played in 1895 in Caracas. The sport spread quickly, particularly among working-class communities where the equipment requirements were relatively minimal. Any open space could become a field, and the game could be played with improvised balls and bats. By the early 1900s, organized baseball leagues had formed, and the sport was firmly established in Venezuelan popular culture. Venezuela's Professional Baseball League. The Venezuelan Professional Baseball League was founded in 1945. It operates during the winter months, from October to January, allowing Major League Baseball players to return home during the North American off-season and play in their home country. The league currently has 8 teams representing different regions and cities. Each team has passionate fan bases that fill stadiums, wave flags, set off fireworks, and create an atmosphere that rivals any sporting event anywhere in the world. The rivalry between Magallanes and Caracas, known as El Clásico, is particularly intense. These two teams, both based in Greater Caracas, face each other multiple times each season, and their games dominate Venezuelan sports media. The passion is genuine, deep, sometimes irrational in the way that sports fandom always is. And it cuts across social classes, bringing together people from all walks of life, all wearing their team's colors, all united in hope and anxiety. Venezuela has produced an extraordinary number of Major League Baseball players, more than 370 at last count. The list of Venezuelan baseball greats includes names that any serious baseball fan would recognize. Luis Aparicio, a shortstop who played primarily for the Chicago White Sox in the 1950s and 60s, was the first Venezuelan inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1984. His speed, defensive skill, and base-stealing ability revolutionized how the position was played. David Concepcion, another Hall of Fame shortstop, spent his entire career with the Cincinnati Reds and was a key member of the Big Red Machine, one of the most dominant teams in baseball history. Oswaldo Guillen managed the Chicago White Sox to a World Series championship in 2005, becoming the first Venezuelan manager to win the title. Johan Santana won 2 Cy Young Awards as the best pitcher in the American League. Miguel Cabrera achieved the Triple Crown in 2012 and finished his career with over 3,000 hits and 500 home runs, statistics that place him among the greatest hitters in baseball history. More recently, players like Jose Altuve, standing just 5 feet 6 inches tall, have captured imaginations. Altuve has won multiple batting titles with the Houston Astros and was the American League Most Valuable Player in 2017. His success, despite being undersized by baseball standards, has made him a beloved figure in Venezuela, proof that talent and determination can overcome physical limitations. Ronald Acuna Jr., an outfielder for the Atlanta Braves, became the first player in Major League history to hit 40 home runs and steal 40 bases in a single season, doing so in 2023. These players are more than athletes in Venezuela. They are national heroes, symbols of what Venezuelans can achieve on the world stage, sources of pride during times when there has been little else to celebrate. When a Venezuelan player succeeds in Major League Baseball, Venezuelans follow along on television and radio, sharing the moment across social media, feeling a connection to someone who came from the same country and made it to the highest level of the sport. Baseball represents continuity, a connection to better times, a reminder that Venezuelan excellence exists and can be recognized worldwide. When everything else seems uncertain, there is still the game, 9 innings of possibility, where a well-hit ball or a perfectly thrown pitch can create a moment of pure joy. Let us step away from sports for a moment and turn to the music that has shaped Venezuelan identity, that accompanies celebrations and daily life, that expresses emotions words alone cannot capture. Venezuela has rich musical traditions that blend indigenous, African, and Spanish influences, creating sounds that are distinctly Venezuelan. The joropo is perhaps the most iconic Venezuelan musical genre, considered the national music. Joropo developed on the llanos during the colonial period, emerging from the cultural mixing of indigenous peoples, Spanish colonizers, and African slaves. The music is characterized by rapid, intricate rhythms played on harps, cuatros, maracas, and accompanied by vocals that often employ a singing style with distinct vocal breaks and flourishes. The cuatro, a four-stringed guitar-like instrument, is central to Venezuelan music. Unlike a standard guitar, the cuatro is smaller and its strings are tuned differently. The instrument is played with rapid strumming patterns that create the driving rhythm underneath joropo melodies. Learning to play cuatro is almost a rite of passage for many Venezuelan musicians. Gaita is another important Venezuelan musical tradition. Originating in the Zulia state in northwestern Venezuela around Lake Maracaibo, the music was originally associated with religious celebrations, particularly those honoring Catholic saints during the Christmas season, but it evolved into a broader cultural expression. Modern Gaita often addresses social and political themes, and Gaita groups can be heard throughout December across. Venezuela has also produced internationally successful musicians. Simon Diaz, who passed away in 2013, was a towering figure in Venezuelan music, known for preserving and popularizing traditional Venezuelan folk music. His song, Caballo Viejo, became internationally famous. Gustavo Dudamel is perhaps Venezuela's most famous classical musician, a conductor who has led some of the world's most prestigious orchestras. Dudamel emerged from El Sistema, Venezuela's remarkable program of youth orchestras that has provided free musical education to hundreds of thousands of children from low-income families since 1975. And so we arrive at the end of this journey through Venezuela, through its mountains and rivers, its foods and music, its history and present crisis, its moments of brilliance and its periods of darkness. We have traveled from Angel Falls, plunging off ancient Tepuy, to lightning storms that never end. We have tasted arepas handed down through millennia. We have traced Bolivar's campaigns and watched baseball heroes achieve excellence on world stages. Venezuela remains, even after everything, a country of remarkable depth and complexity. Its geography alone, from Caribbean beaches to Amazon rainforest, from Andean peaks to vast grasslands, contains extraordinary diversity. Its cultural heritage, blending indigenous knowledge with Spanish colonial influences and African traditions, has produced food, music, art, and customs that are distinctively Venezuelan, yet connected to broader Latin American currents. Its people, despite immense challenges, maintain resilience, creativity, and pride in their identity and homeland. The recent military intervention and Maduro's capture have opened a new chapter in Venezuelan history, one whose ending we cannot yet know. Will the country stabilize? Will oil revenues be used to rebuild infrastructure and institutions? Will the millions who fled be able to return home? These questions have no clear answers yet. History is being written now, in real time. What we do know is that Venezuela's story matters far beyond its borders. It matters for the millions of Venezuelan migrants who have reshaped demographics across South America and in the United States. It matters for regional stability, for questions about sovereignty and intervention. It matters for understanding how societies respond to collapse, how culture persists through crisis, how ordinary people maintain dignity and hope when everything around them seems to be falling apart. Venezuela is not defined solely by its current moment, however dramatic that moment may be. The Tepuy will still stand long after today's political conflicts are forgotten. Angel Falls will still plunge from Oyan Tepuy's heights. The Orinoco will still flow to the sea. Venezuelan families will still make arepas, still gather to prepare halakas, still teach their children joropo dances and baseball swings. Culture has remarkable staying power. It adapts, transforms, endures. As you lie here, drifting towards sleep, or simply listening to these words wash over you, perhaps you carry away some sense of this country's complexity. Perhaps you understand a bit more about how a nation blessed with extraordinary natural resources and a proud history could face such difficult circumstances. Perhaps you feel some connection, however small, to Venezuelan people whose lives have been shaped by forces largely beyond their control, but who continue, day after day, to live, to work, to love, to hope for something better. Venezuela waits now, waits to see what emerges from this latest crisis, waits for the chance to rebuild, waits for the possibility that the future might be brighter than the recent past. In that waiting, life continues. The sun rises over the Caribbean and sets behind the Andes. Lightning flashes over Lake Maracaibo. Coffee grows on mountain slopes. Children play baseball. Musicians practice cuatro and harp. Families gather around tables when they can. Small acts of kindness occur daily. Humor persists, that distinctly Venezuelan sense of irony and resilience that allows people to laugh even when circumstances seem overwhelming. If there is hope to be found, it lies in this cultural resilience, in the capacity of Venezuelan people to maintain their humanity through impossible circumstances. It lies in diaspora communities recreating Venezuela abroad while dreaming of return. It lies in those who stayed, who continue working, teaching, healing, creating despite lacking resources and often lacking hope. It lies in young people who still imagine futures where they can build careers, raise families, contribute to their communities in Venezuela itself. The 100 facts we have explored tonight are just fragments, tiny pieces of an infinitely complex whole. For every story told, 1,000 remain untold. Venezuela is vast, containing multitudes, defying summary. But perhaps you have glimpsed something of what makes this country remarkable. Perhaps you understand why Venezuelans love their homeland so fiercely. Perhaps you sense the tragedy of potential unrealized, of gifts squandered, of a nation that should be prosperous and stable, but which instead has been broken by choices made by leaders who valued power over the welfare of those they govern. As this night deepens and your breathing slows, as your thoughts begin to drift and settle, carry with you these images. Waterfalls falling from mountains that touch the sky, lightning storms that never end, cornmeal patties handed down through millennia, liberators dreaming of continental unity, music that moves like water, people dancing, families preparing elaborate meals together, baseball players achieving excellence, refugees carrying their culture with them, communities persisting against all odds. Venezuela is all of this and more. It is a country that has experienced the highest peaks and the lowest valleys. It is a place of natural wonders and human struggles, of cultural richness and difficult challenges, of boundless resources and complex circumstances. It is home to people who deserve better than the history they have been given, who deserve the chance to build the future they have envisioned, who deserve to live in a country where their gifts, their work, their dreams can flourish. The story is not over. Venezuela's next chapters have yet to be written. What happens in the coming months and years will determine whether this is a tale of redemption or further challenge, of recovery or continued difficulty, of hope vindicated or hope tested. The choices being made now by Venezuelans and by those who seek to influence Venezuela's future from outside will echo for generations. Thank you for joining me tonight on this journey through Venezuela, through its mountains and valleys, through its triumphs and challenges, through its foods and music and traditions, through its complicated, painful, beautiful history. I hope you have learned something new, something that surprised you, something that challenged your assumptions, something that helped you see this country as more than just headlines. Venezuela is a real place, full of real people, with real cultures and traditions that matter deeply to those who participate in them. It is home. It is heritage. It is identity. It is the place where millions of people were born, grew up, fell in love, raised children, and lived full human lives. If you enjoyed this exploration, if you found value in these stories, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Restful Realities. Your support helps me continue creating these long-form, in-depth explorations of places, cultures, and histories that deserve attention and respect. Share this with someone who might be interested in learning about Venezuela, who might benefit from understanding this complex nation beyond the headlines. And perhaps, if you feel moved to do so, remember Venezuela in your thoughts. Remember the people there who face daily challenges. Remember the refugees seeking safety and opportunity abroad. Remember the cultural traditions that persist against all odds. Remember that every place, no matter how troubled, contains within it human beings deserving of dignity, respect, and the chance to build better futures. Sleep well. Dream of waterfalls and lightning, of mountains and music, of a country waiting for the chance to rise again. Good night.